So I want to do the scientific to it mix. I'm someone who prefers that we use Russian language, Russian terms, but in the international spheres, we've decided that more or less they use more Latin terms or Greek terms. So ethnos, the people, is a more thinner understanding of geo. You understand geographic, earth in politics. It's also a Greek word. So we look at everything that's happening on planet Earth from the perspective the mutual coexistence of national groups, people, how they react on the happening, and what the role is that in this process. Well, how this system of safety. We have different groups: therapists, surgeons, oculists, some people that work with the lungs, people with the respiratory systems, and they observe the symptoms of the person, figure out what's important in their health. Is more likely than not is the reason for their not health. That's the same thing with international relations. Here, the most important subject, again, not the Russian term, but we'll do our best to translate the non-Russian words into Russian. Why? Well, because many of you might actually know the individual terms better than I do, but any lecture should cover the most widespread audience. Here, the beginner should also understand. So, so I will do my best to use always in parallel the Russian words. So the main subject of the international relations in this situation, the main phase. Well, the space is not a physical, it's a huge mass, of huge masses. Who are the Russians, Americans, Italians, and so on. Big national grouping. Here is, in this object of the studies, ethno geopolitics is there lies the most important moment that has been again little research and hasn't been taught as a scientific discipline in most universities in the planet. It's a moment about civilization because you do a good job understanding what nationality is in our country, more than 100 nationalities. But not always do you have the understanding of what is civilization. It's a moment of civilization because you understand very good what nationality is in our country, especially more than 100 nationalities. Well, not always do you have an understanding of what is civilization. Right away, let me explain that we will talk about six civilizations. There's a Western Christian civilization. You know these countries very well. In the Western Hemisphere, it's Canada and the USA, almost all of Western Europe and Eastern Europe, and everybody's here in this European Union, 400 million. There are considered maybe about 1 billion. From the USA, almost 300 million, Canada, Europe, almost about 700, 800 million. Well, if you take us together as also some Christian civilization, 1 billion. But there's two civilizations. The single civilization, we split it in two, into Western Christian and Eastern Orthodox. Why do we split it in half? Because here there happens to be two systems, two camps. We split them in half. Western Christian, that's from the perspective of religion, Catholics, Protestants, Lutherans, everyone except Eastern Orthodox, so we understand each other. And we are the second part of the Christian world, Eastern Orthodox civilization. Here is mainly the Russia, you and I. Next to us is Ukraine, Belarus. It's in some regards, from the religious perspective, perhaps Moldavia is Eastern Orthodox or Romania. But But ethno-geopolitically speaking, Romania is also considered Western Christian civilization. Well, it's a temporary phenomenon. I'm talking about a global phenomenon. Bulgaria, perhaps Macedonia, Serbia, everybody's Orthodox countries, and almost all of them are Slavians, with the exception of Greece, Romania, and Moldavia. But you have to have to know this very well. Which countries are considered with whose civilization, and which countries, and which people live there, and and it happens such that some of the people are considered as Eastern Orthodox, and some are in the Western Christian Catholics. For example, it could be Czechoslovakia, and many other Slavic nations. Well, here's two civilizations. I hope you understood. On the map, we showed you Canada as USA and all of Western Europe, and well, that's about 30 countries in the European Union. And we are the Eastern Orthodox civilization, huge Russia from the Baltic to Sahalina, and parts of Eastern Europe and the Balkan nations. In regards to this, unfortunately, Greece is considered Western Christian nation. Well, besides the religious elements, properties of determining the civilization, there's also important to say economics, cultures, all of these geo. That's what we already figured out. The people that live here, Greeks are Orthodox, but they're part of the Western Christian. Why? Well, because here it already is a part of the geographic element. They were always there near the West. Same with Poland. Today, she is unfortunately, after 1991, has been finalized into the Western Christian civilization. When I mean finalized, I don't mean forever, I mean her political orientation. And then 1945 until 1989, almost 50 years, they were Poland and other countries were taken together, social camps, and even our military bloc was called the Warsaw Pact. And so that is, we have two civilizations. Third civilization, Islamic civilization. You could also call it Middle East Islamic because on the West, there's pretty much not many Islamic countries. There's some Muslims on the Balkans, Albania, Kosovo, territory of Serbia, or maybe some Muslims in the southern of Spain, and Turkey. It's considered a European country. Well, to be honest, if we're speaking honestly, only about 3% of Turkish territory is considered European. It's mostly Asian side. Well, since they did include it like that, so, and in regards to the laws of ethno geopolitical, the Asian side of the country is included into the ensemble of European countries from the military perspective. There need to be have been Turkish soldiers, Turkish meat, Turkey as a candidate of NATO, one and only. That is why they included into the consortium or the mutual union of European people. That was the first phase of the 49th year to 1999, the year, 50 years. But today, Turkey, wants to be a fully righteous member of the European Union. But the Europeans don't want to. Why? Nobody wants it in general. French and Germans don't want it because the mechanism worked of ethno geopolitics. There goes the brainwashing of Asiatic people into the European continent. The migration is coming from the North Africa, Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, partially Libya, Nigeria, well, almost all of North Africa. Same with the tropical Africa, more south, Nigeria, Kenya, and so on and so on, with the exception of South Africa. And now in Europe, is moving towards Europe. Europe considers a lot of Arabs, Turkish, and Albanians. Many millions of people. In all of Germany, there's more than 5 million. They can't count them all because they come with family and the guests, visitors, and really there's probably more on all these countries and all these refugees and pre-settlers. Not all of them qualify for the criteria. It doesn't, it's not possible to count all of the population. So around approximately, we will consider the Asian people, there's no less than 10 million migrants, including France, mostly in France and Germany, and some smaller countries in like Amsterdam, Netherlands, and so on. So Turkey, they don't want to consider her a European country. They don't say it straight and bluntly, but they don't want to say it because of the ethnic factor and religious. Well, it's kind of obvious. It makes sense. All the Turks are mostly Muslims. It's sort of a different culture, and the Western Europe is scared of a too many Turks, and more importantly, Germany is more afraid of it. In this manner, we to talk to you about the third major civilization, the Middle Eastern Islamic. It's more than 1 billion people. It is all of North Africa, with the whole Middle East, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, parts of African countries, suppose there's Southern Sudan, there's Nigeria, Chad. So half Africa, more or less, is Islamic people, and next to India, behind India, Bangladesh. We talked about India, but it's a separate and Islamic government. Later, Malaysia and Indonesia. Indonesia is the biggest Islamic country, 200 million. How is that possible? Well, Indonesia and Malaysia are situated in the zone of Buddhist civilization, the fourth civilization that we will talk about. Well, it's what seems like how it was overlooked. The situation was overlooked, and for some reason, all of the southern civilization, Buddhist civilization, turned out to be in the Muslim sphere of influence. And and it turned out that this huge Islamic government and nearby is almost all Buddhist people. So we we counted four civilizations: Western Christian, Eastern Orthodox, Eastern Islamic, and Buddhist, the fourth. Of course, it's China, and here we include everything that includes Asia, India. Although it's Hinduism, maybe it has some difference from Buddhism, but in general, it is one civilization. Even though Japan has its own religion, simply too, well, more or less, it is one civilization. Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, the government of Nguyen, before it was known as Burma, everyone's forgotten about it. 50 years it has civil war, everyone's forgotten about it. There's a factor that plays a major role: economy, and more specifically, drugs, narcotics. Narcotics trading over there, and they're battling in Afghanistan, but they forgot about this Niam. So these four civilizations are the major ones, so to say, and they cover basically the whole planet. Because in the Western Christian civilization, we also forgot to mention all of South and Latin American, like countries of Catholic religious. So the major factor of determining civilization is religious. So every Catholic of the world, and that's all Latin American and Protestants and Lutherans, as the whole of Europe, there's a billion. There's a billion of them. Islamic, also almost a billion, more than a billion. Buddhist, more than 3 billion, we can say. But we are the least populated, as it turns out, the Eastern Orthodox civilization, the least populous. Well, no, despite that, we take such a geographic position, including Moscow, so it kind of is even referenced as the center of the planet. Like in the organism, like the main center of the organ is the heart, and the other parts of the body could be straight and internal organism. But the heart is just a fifth, not big, but it is the most important organ. It pumps the blood across all of the skin, all the parts of the body, and that's just like Moscow is considered the center of Russia, and Russia as a whole is more or less is the most important, painful part of the planet. We should also mention there's two civilizations, so it would be a more would make sense for our discussion later. Fifth civilization, it is the polytheistic religion. Again, the factor of culture, religion. Then there's no Christianity, Islam, or Buddhism, no religion. This is considered some of the separate African countries. It could be north of Canada, no, or north of Russia, starting from Niemce in Arhangельsk Oblast and Liamal, Taimyr people, the Tushu tribes, and all this the Russian north, far north. It is more or less the polytheistic civilization that has it's the type of people that did not accept any of the major world religions. They didn't accept Christianity, even though there's many Christians around them. Like Ethiopia used to be a Christian and now it's Christian. But right near it there's African tribes that are not some of them accepted Islam. And same with us, notwithstanding that Russia is more than 1,000 years a Christian country. In the north, some of the people remain in this polytheistic old believers. For how general of thumb is usually not usually more developed, but very mineral rich. For example, in the glove of these civilizations lies very important resources: oil, diamonds, Yakutia, diamonds, and so on. Finally, the last. civilization we're counting, but maybe the most important, the hidden civilization. It is, if we consider religious factor, it would be the Jewish civilizations, the Jews. They're generally, there are about 30 million, there was 30 million on the planet. About 6 billion were destroyed, killed during the Second World War. This, again, what factor played in this? Ethno Geo Political. They murdered the Jews for the national reasons. See, this is what we're discussing. Ethnos. It was for ethno. Geo means earth. This is where he lives. Ethno is Narod. If there was no Jews in the fascist Germany, there would not be such a scary genocide. And the Jews and the Germany, and with this extremist situation and the arrival of extremist Nazis and the politics of genocide. But genocide is when they destroy, kill for a nationalistic principle. The first genocide was in Armenia about 100 years ago. The Turkeys cut out about 1.5 million Armenians. And the second genocide was against the Jews. This is in 1945. And the third genocide was against the Gypsies. And the fourth is against us, my friends, against the Russians. Well, maybe today, maybe 30 more years, 21st century, Russian map is being turned into this Armenian Jewish Gypsy, this people of the untouchables. They're surrounded with military bases and, of course, ethno geopolitics. Again, ethnos, the Russians are getting in the way of us. They're doing aggressive politics. Our politics linked with economic problems, including oil, gas, and the solving of communist problems and influencing and spreading Western civilization onto post-Soviet space. And the main instrument is to squeeze out everywhere the Russians. So this would be the sixth hidden civilization, the Jewish civilization. There's about 5 million in Israel, about 6 million in USA, and in France there's a lot of them. In Germany, almost all of Europe. In Russia, there's not as much as before as other. We're about 250,000. Let's say 300,000. In general, Moscow, St. Petersburg, Rostov, Novosibirsk. Well, this is the secret civilization plays the most important role. Why? Because in the strength of historic reasons, in ancient Jewish governments, it was squeezed out. The main population of Europe was migrated, exiled to Europe. Ethno exile. Ethno exile is the idea of exiling a whole people from a permanent residence into a completely different location. In this scenario, from the Middle East, they dumped them out into Europe. Some left to Africa, and some of them spread out elsewhere. Some went to Russia, Eastern Europe. They went farther, past the Ural Mountains, and so on. And then when the United States was born, they went there as well. And as a result, since they are everywhere considered foreigners, different others for self-preservation, and that's the main factor. That's the main factor that will save us Russians is this idea is preserve ourselves, preserve our people. Same with the Jewish people, but they don't have land anywhere because everywhere they were considered others, foreigners, migrants, migrants. That's what we call them. So in other words, the migrating citizens of a specific nationality across other countries of the world. They were had no choice but to work into humanitarian work and trade to make money, humanitarian to work with the press in order to preserve themselves ideologically, propaganda-wise. Well, today this hidden civilization in their hands holds huge amount of newspapers, magazines, TV, radio channels, banking systems, mostly in their hands. National banks, and including world banks, to banks of the European and Reconstruction and to the World Monetary Fund, almost all financial institutions of the world is for the most part, 90% is inside this hidden civilization. So not so even if it's a small population, they do have a huge influence. And their work goes into the political sphere, the ruling parties and the governments and the prime ministers and so on. And they are here's the elections of the presidents of 2008. also had this factor, ethno, geopolitical, ethno. Candidate of the Democratic Party, Albert Gore, is Jewish. And some powers that be did not want in the USA for him to be the president. He had all the possibility of the Geo, second main element of our discussion, geopolitica. America didn't want in Israel. He would have been prime minister, but America is not a Jewish nation, although there's a lot of them there. And politics was said no, they didn't give him the possibility. Although he did actually win. You do remember that the moment in Florida where the governor Jeb Bush, the younger brother of the current president, they count the ballots that Bush won, and in actuality, the Americans voted for Gore. This is the hidden civilization, and it has the possibility of dominating other parts of the world and to preserve its self-interest. And when the government of Israel was being founded, Russia at the time it was called Soviet Union helped create Israel. Stalin helped and made it. He wanted to help to create a pro-Soviet government in the Middle East, and a lot of Soviet Jews went there. And in 1945, the war was over, and in 47, 46, the officers of the Soviet army, Jews, went there for resettlement. But Israel reoriented later and became mutually working and was an ally to the USA. Why? Because in the Soviet Union, there began the process of anti-Semitism, just like the element of government politics. It was happened in Stalin with Brezhnev and Khrushchev. Therefore, Israel reoriented towards the USA. So we put the bet on ethnos of Jews. We made it. We made it part of the planet in the Middle East geography, and our politics, foreign politics, was there. So this is what I want you to properly understand: the spring, the reasons, the ins, the incoming data, and the reasons of all the world events. The root problem. For example, there's this instrument of knowledge called Marxism. It's mostly class struggles, classes, right, working class. What on some kind of phase, all different countries could have different parts of life, and some could work together and can exhibit solidarity between each other, could come together and have a wholesome presentation, protesting. Well, the consequence of these class interests always they were subordinated by national interest. The working class of France, French army, they they fought with the working class of German armies, and they did not exhibit class solidarity, and they did not run from their armies to escape military conflict. So the class method doesn't work. Although Marxism is a good philosophical teaching, but the attempt to realize its main instruments and positions of Marxism, well, how it happened in our country in the Bolshevik coup d'état and the attempt to realize the principle of Marxism. At that time, it was already called Marxism-Leninism, resulted in failure. Why? Because class solidarity, class class method doesn't work. National method to determine what it means to have a national interest. When they confuse national perspective with government, when we say of the national interest of the USA, those are the national interest of the government. They have many different people. Same with us. So here we need to have a different term for this. I mean, we'll call it government interest, interest of a specific government, and interest of a particular ethnos and people. We already talked about the Jews, for example, or the Armenians. They also live in many parts of the world, the diaspora, and they defend their own national interest of the diaspora in many countries. But the Armenian government, they defend their government interests. Same with Russia. There's a difference. There's the interest of the Russian Federation, and then there's the national interest of the Russian people that today turns out are in a particular, not a very positive, comfortable position. So in this scenario, we need to distinguish something so we understand the whole mechanisms of international relations. So I already compared people who have a good, healthy, everything nice and quiet, good relationships, some quiet and relaxed. For example, Australia, or for example, South Africa today, or Northern Europe. Well, somewhere there's a little bit of a chaos. Sometimes the person have a liver problem, or lungs, or the movements, limbs. Same with international relationships. The Middle East is having some struggle. Israel, Palestine, one conflict. Iraq is another conflict. Iran, third conflict. Pakistan, China, Central Asia, starts out to be a nuclear nation. Well, there's the conflicts, and we need to study them. We can't we can't study them using old methodology, research methods, world politics. But we right now we're studying world politics, right? How can we study it? In what way? Well, X-ray, for example. In medicine, the most best way to determine what's going on in the body is to do the CAT scan X-ray. Here's a neighboring artery. We see it, and in a particular way, we can make it bigger. We can do a treatment. Same with ethno geopolitics. We can we can do a X-ray scan, ethnic scan, whose interests were touched upon in which place, and who does what. So, for example, in the Middle East, Israel and Palestine, of course, international intercultural conflict. There's no clash with Israel because Israel is a new government that was formed, and Palestine is not even a government. So it's an intercultural conflict. It's autonomous because here is a conflict, a straight an ethnic conflict, and it's situated on the land of the previous Palestinian government, previous British colony, British Turkish colony. And after the 1945, there already is a situated different separate government of Israel, and Palestine was not. So this conflict is intercultural. It's not intergovernmental. So take our country, for example. Most of you don't know the geography too well, and it seems so far. Israel is so far. Arabs or China, where's all that? Here in Russia, after 1991, conflict in general has an ethnic cloud. Ethnos, people. We have more than 100 nationalities. And what direction does it have? Anti-Russian. In other words, it's happening in 1917 year. The government coup d'etat destroyed the Russian Empire, and this regime survived before 1991, before August, before the moment of disappearance of the Soviet Union, and in place of one illegal regime, there's those formed by the Bolshevik coup d'etat. There came in its replacement different illegal regime that was called democratic. Why are they illegal, these regimes? That's also the third element. Ethno Geo Politics, the third element. The change in government and the results of the elections, results of war, and the result of revolution. All three factors have place in Russia in 1917. Russian Empire took part in the World War One. In the result, it was in a bloodless transfer of political regime, the resignation of the Tsar resigned of the throne. It turns into a republic, and the Russian Republic as a result. The elections happen in this republic, and the elections have were scheduled for January. But in October, there was a government coup d'etat by the Bolsheviks party. They took control of power with military means, and in January, when the population voted as an element of democratically, the Bolsheviks did not like the the results of the first meeting, and they, well, in theory, this first change of power came into a military means, not illegal. The Tsar had the right to resign. Yes, we're only choosing the foreign world. The Tsar had the right to resign, and the monarch has the right, and any head of government can resign, and prime minister inter party, the governor of territories. Tsar resigned, and he had the right to do so. He did so in the March of 1917. But the October coup d'état, that was not within the ranks of the law, and they would use military by force, and it resulted in civil war, not legal. And America, even by 1934, did not recognize the Soviet Union. and later it recognized it, which was a mistake. It recognized it not because it decided because they wanted to be truth to the not to recognize force in military coups in political sphere. In this case, the change in government, but they recognized because in Europe there was Hitler. Well, there's a Geo Ethnos, German people with a fascist regime in Germany. So on this side, somebody recognized Soviet Union, but somebody does not recognize it. If separately you study it, you wouldn't understand why. Why? Not a legal regime. Most of the European countries recognized it by the third 1930, but America lagged behind, but did not recognize it until 1934. So we will need to look at these deeper and take an X-ray. And now let's walk towards our modern contemporary reality. In the process of international relationships, works out the politics, the third element, standard, political standards. Well, the best example is the first standard. It's not possible to recognize the Soviet Union. That would have been the right standard because it was a government coup d'etat. But they made an exception and they recognized the second standard, recognized the annexation of the breakup of Czechoslovakia by Hitler. Again, Europe should not accept this. Why some European nation annexes a territory that doesn't belong to them? So before 1941, the standard was broken many times. There weren't double or triple standards. First, primary standard, different countries broke the standards, and they, for example, recognizing Soviet Union and also recognizing and making legitimizing the aggressive takeover of territory by the German. This is where the element of political element or the political international relationships is mixed in a geographic space. For example, the European continent in the 1939 year. Let's take that. This is mixing in the favor of ethnos. See, again, it doesn't matter. Democracy doesn't matter. It doesn't matter on economics. They are saving themselves. It doesn't matter who they make agreements with, whoever they forgive any actions, uh, just so France can save themselves, so Britain doesn't get bombed by Germany. So all the international human rights and territorial integrity is ignored. Ethnos protects itself. So let's take the parallel. So take an example. I'm sure in your life you had similar situation where you preserved yourself, you saved yourself your comfort, your money, for your property. It's always this self-preservation always works. The instinct of self-preservation always works. Of family, of humans, of a whole ethnos. So we defend our own. Let Stalin, let Hitler, as long as they don't touch us. We French, don't touch us. We're going to South, take Paris, take all you got. Well, you because now that you analyze contemporary international position and learning specific and individual historic episodes from world history, you should be able to make an inference and decipher these situations of these elements and principle of ethno geopolitics, so you could properly understand why what happened the way it did. What was the reason? More closer to us, so it'd be more easy to understand. Because very often it's hard to understand that history 50 years ago, 100 years ago, because we didn't live then. We don't know, we're not capable of seeing the dispersion of strength and properly ascertain what happened. But today, in this live moment of the sequence of events that are happening around our country or inside our country, there's Balkans, for example. Balkans are destroyed. It was a beautiful southern Slavic country, Yugoslavia, and many multicultural governments. Some people was the dominant. Some people in the country was dominant. Why do they say so, use Latin terms? They sometimes are just different from the Russian terms. The Russian world of godly, made godly, it's almost like this people were dominating negatively the other people. But when you take the Latin term, dominate, we it's a little less harsh. What it means, it is it dominates. For example, Yugoslavia, it encompasses the people. They're the dominant is the Serbs. For example, the Serbs took part of the more than half of and lived in more than six new governments. They lived in Slovenia, Horvatia, Macedonia, Bosnia, and Georgia and Montenegro, and all these new republics that were used to be part of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. Now they're independent nations. Ethno dominant were the Serbs. Serbs were Slavic people. There are tribes. They're also Slavic. We also came from there. Our Russian tribe is all part of the Slavic Balkan tribes because the house warm, everything was there, overpopulated. You remember the Jewish people? They forcefully exiled them from the Middle East, and they went to the Europe, but Europe was busy, so they couldn't make their own government. So same with our situation. We just left slowly. Our Russian tribes they went to the north and the east. On the west, there's other tribes like Slovenia, the Slavic tribe, Czech, Poland. But our ancestors, they went to Kiev, Kievsko Russian, Moscow, Vladimir Suzdal, Pskov, Novgorod, and past the Ural Mountains and Sakhalin and Kamchatka. So Yugoslavia was defending. The ethno dominant were the Serbians, were also Eastern Orthodox like we, also Cyrillic, same alphabet, Slavic, different from Latin. The point of the Yugoslavian order was to hit our ally. Why is Yugoslavia our ally? Ethnos is one and the one people. Russian Serbians are brothers. We're like cousins. Russians are brothers, but cousins are Russian and Serbs. It's like it's like the same parents are brothers, but then the sons are fathers of brothers of your sons of your father. Well, they're cousins. It's still the same blood, but they're cousins. Well, they're very close to us. But religion is the same. Everything is the same. Tradition is the same. So Yugoslavia, they wanted to hit Yugoslavia as exercise, so that afterwards they could hit us. But by the other side, for other reason why they went on Yugoslavia is because the collapse of Yugoslavia is the first phase of taking hit on us to cut us off from the European. Through Yugoslavia, more close Eastern Orthodox, we had some of the closest ties with Europe. It was like the corridor, like a tunnel with Europe. And the collapse of Yugoslavia resulted in what? Not only did they split up a nice, quiet country. I was there in November '91. The stores are filled with products. People are working. Nobody's shooting, and all of that was destroyed. They had chaos, a civil war, mutual blaming, murder, and they separated them. And they took us out of there. And today in Serbia, people are suffering. So same with Slovenians, Croatians, Bosnians, Macedonians, and everything there's anti-Serbian regimes, anti-Christian Orthodox regimes. Of course, that kind of gets in the way in Serbia's way of resurrecting its influence, and also to maintain itself as its independence, because they stripped it off its their resources and even stripped it off historic statues. So, for example, Kosovo, why is they don't really mind so much because they have Christian monuments, their roots. But Suzdal, Sergei Posad, it's what I'm saying that they took Suzdal and Sergei Posad, Kurds took over it. Some different people came and they took our holy landmarks, and if they're important for Christian Russian people, they're all of a sudden there's a different nation, different nationality. Well, that was a problem. This is the ethnos dominant. The goal of NATO was to hit Serbians, because if they hit Serbians, then they could collapse the whole Yugoslavia. And if they they take out the foundation of the government from the perspective of ethnos, the foundation was in fact Serbians. So it would be easy to collapse the government. Right away, there results in separatism of the nationalities. Slovenians want to be separate. Everybody wants to separate. Croatia wants to be separate. They take the whole Adriatic Sea. Bosnia and Herzegovina separate. People living, also Serbs are living there, but also Muslims and Catholics and Orthodox. So they get the geography. Look how interesting it is. Balkan or Russians is this thing that's the most typical ethno geopolitical. Bosnia and Herzegovina in the center of the Sixth Republic of Yugoslavia. It's all the same Serbians, but always Turkic people took power there. And the Balkan, they made them Muslims. Same language, Serbian, but parts of Serbians by the Croatian, they made them Catholics. And Serbia nearby is part of Bosnia, is Eastern Orthodox. So one nation, but three religions. One people, three religions, one language, same geography, all very close to each other. National villages familiar, but different religions. And as a result, they separated it from the Eastern Orthodox Serbia and occupied it all. So that means how do we take out Balkan Yugoslavia, take out the Serbian dominant by hitting them hard? And then when they hit them hard, they split them up in six regions. They take a hit by Eastern Orthodox, prop up the Catholics, prop up the Muslims in Bosnia, prop up the Muslims in Kosovo, Albanian factors also. So there was an ethnic exile. See again, we had ethnic exile. Remember when we talked about ethnic exile of Israelis and Armenians, ethnic exile of the Kurdish, so the Western Turkish, 20 million Kurds in the northern Iraq, 3 million Kurds in the Western Iran. There live 40 million Kurds, also exiled to Europe. We have some people in Caucasus, also in Moscow. There's some of them, some places of Kurdish people. Kurdish is they have the pure Kurds and mixed Kurds. The ethnic moment is everywhere. So if you understand it well, so when we will be able to solve the international relations in for our interests. Some people use this factor. We don't use this factor. It's a Soviet model that's getting in the way of properly using this ethno geopolitical factor. We went by principle of class solidarity. It's bourgeoisie and world communistic. Let's go, Comintern. Let's go on the mosque. Let's go to the meeting. We went, but we do want to eat. So that's why. So that's why the the factors most matter most. Communist, but I'm in Africa. Give me to eat. Give me the library, university. But I will go to Moscow for the meeting. But after that, I'm going to go to my poor village, or if I go in an unstable region where there's a war. So therefore, well, it's not that's not simply an October Revolution hit us hard from an illegal government, but it also ruined our ethno geopolitical model of the Russian Empire. And today's problems. So your parents are get 1,000 rubles in a month, 4,000 rubles a month. It's nothing. It's the consequences of a bad decision all the promise of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. And today, when we lose in Kiev, in Tbilisi, Bishkek, in the spring we lose in Baku, it's again not understanding ethno geopolitical factor. And Armenia, we're going to lose too in the perspective. And of course, Georgia losing today, not properly using the ethno geopolitical principles. And Abkhazia is pushing Ossetia away. Ossetia and Turkish and Ossetians get Armenians are worried and so on. So everywhere there is a principle. If you study them deeply, you will be a talented workers in the political sphere, wherever you worked in the foreign ministry, in the governmental orders, or any ministries. Everything you need to understand all of this. It's very important. If somebody says, "Oh well, I'm working programming, I'm working business, I'm working sports," it's all temporary. But our country will it exist? What kind of country will it be? When in 1991 we just simply gave a gift. We just gifted away 5 million territorial square miles, and we lost half of our nation. And we left to the borders of 1917. That was a mistake. Political error. That 300 years, oh, our ancestors and great 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 grandparents, they were doing something. A huge empire that we built, but not knowing the laws of growth and mechanism of world politics resulted that 300 years just threw it under the rug. We lost 300 years of the victories of our fleet. Millions of people died. No empire, no Soviet Union. We had 280 million. Now we have 140 million. See how we how we didn't how we didn't properly act. So this is not that easy to understand. We have to understand. This is self-preserving. So Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the preservation of the people. So we like without him, we don't know that we should take care of our citizens. Some of the most important is to preserve our country. But he's like a writer. He's very talented. He forgot. He just don't know. Ethno Geo Politics. Well, the most important national idea is to preserve the people. Ethnos. Right, that's right. But what about geography? Second moment. Ethno Geo Politics. Where is this people going to live? Oh, that's hard for him because he's a humanitarian writer. Because he's only interested in the people. But I'm telling you, like a professor of international rights, a person is a soldier. It's a police officer. It's a doctor, a teacher, officer. We can't just preserve and save one person or individuals. We have to preserve the government from where they're all going to live. So if you put on the first place just the individual, so everybody's going to die. That's why the West gives us the structure, and the whole world is trying to give us, oh, human rights. Because if we just defend the human rights like an individual, so the whole system collapses. How is it, man? Or how's the example of the body? Forget about the heart. And if we're only going to heal the nails, there's like a illness of the hair or the nails. The person's going to die because the most important is that the major functions of his health. So it's most important to heal the heart. Same here. An element of ethno geopolitics. Same with Yugoslavia. That was an example of how they destroyed it. They used this factor. They took out the Serbs like a dominant people. They hit them with the Orthodox. Uh, they were supporting the Kosovo's extremists to take over the churches, to blockade economically, to announce a blockade, to to prevent the arms trade. Well, in general, that's ethnos, Serbia. They moved them aside, and the government fell apart. No gear, Balkan. That happened on the Balkans. It connected us. It affected us directly because it's a practice. It's a model. It's a full real-time simulation that's being used against us. They're today are just in the same manner trying to destroy us while working this model in Yugoslavia. Before that, they tried this in Libya. There's also a problem with the national. They were able to hit the key central area and destroy Libya. A couple others. Other governments exploded exactly because of this principle. It was Sudan, perhaps Ethiopia, and other that didn't take notice because we guys didn't even notice. It didn't even concern you. It happened 20 years ago, 30 years, 300 years ago, and so on. And so the Yugoslavic scenario playbook was done in order to get us out of the Balkan states in Eastern Europe, kick us out there as factor of geography, to split us out from the southern Slavs, separate us from them, Serbs. That's the ethnic factor. And civilizational political factor. In the beginning of the lecture, we talked about opposing civilizations. The Western Christian, for the duration of the last 200 years, is constantly fighting with the Eastern Orthodox civilization. We're like competitors for that large European that all the Christian people are situated in. And this collapse is possible. Well, it's not the complete victory. It's occupied. The occupied Balkans are fully occupied for what? Ethnos, ethnos, ethno geopolitical, in order to prevent the Serbs to reinstate their strength and their potential. and Geo were on the Balkans. They understood that just to split or collapse Yugoslavia, just to hit on the dominant people, nationality Serbs, just this decreasing the communistic regimes is not going to result in the rejuvenation of the domination of Christian civilization in the Balkans in the face of NATO, in the face of Germany, France, Britain, and USA as the main superpower in the Western world. So today, the Balkans are fully occupied. Well, the result is not what they're hoping for because they're going to need to take their military many years, and of course, in the end, they're going to have to leave, and and there will be other early sequence of events. This gradual rejuvenation of the Serbian factor in the Balkan. Another thing is because in Balkan is affecting us, like relationship to us all the time. The countries of NATO and the Council of Europe and this Brussels Union or the NATO's Union or the double-sided agreements with France, German, British, and new governments, satellite states of the Western world. They use the Muslim factor. They support Muslims. First of all, they hate the Christians from this perspective of the Western civilization, the NATO forces, and and the Muslim factor is that they support Albanians and Albanians like Albania and Albanians in Kosovo, Albanians in the North Macedonia, and they're ready to go into Montenegro. So Albania are the second people that is struggled and dispersed all in the Balkans that is living next to the neighboring countries. And all this, they're doing this in order to pit Muslims and the Christians together. That's what we're coming back to, into the intercultural clashes, just balancing. So these six civilizations are more active: the Western Christian, Eastern Orthodox, Middle Islamic, Buddhist, and you're Jewish, and they have it in Europe, and representatives in Russia and America. Well, but if we take, namely, the fight of civilizations, so the goal of the Western Christian world is domination. Remember, Napoleon wanted to do this, Hitler, that's all the Western the civilizations. American today, the creation of NATO, that's all the phases of this. Historians one can teach. Without this ethno geopolitical, they're not going to be able to get dig to the main issues, and we're not be able to give the correct prognosis, prediction of the future. So this Muslim playbook is being replayed in order to cut opposing forces between the Western Christians and the Muslim. But they want to hide this. So they want to conflict with the Eastern Orthodox with the Muslims. So in the Balkans, for example, they help the Muslims, and they put that poison onto the Serbs. That last example is in March of the 2004. About 2,000 Serbs were cut in different parts, dismembered in the territory of Kosovo. Kosovo is considered non-recognized part territory, but the Kosovan Albanians, they wanted to make Kosovo a sovereign independent. They want to take another hit on Serbia. This government never existed, but Kosovo Albanians in Kosovo and Europe already helped them. So this even another seventh Kosovo. And, now let's get closer to ours. Now, now they want to do the same thing to us, and partially they've already done it. In December of 1991, instead of the USSR, they created a broken up CIS, Commonwealth of Independent States. The real USSR was a single government, inheritance of Russian Empire, and the Soviet model, economics, ideology, and so on. And now they're trying to separate it. What is going on now? In regards to there's the ethnic factor. The split up with the USSR happened strictly by ethnic principles. Pre-Baltics, Latvians, Lithuanians, Estonians, Belarusians, Ukrainians, Caucasians, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Central Asia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Everything is split up by the ethnic principle. You see, it's ethno. There's new geo also, geography of our previous Soviet Union. There only had one government. There now to be 15 new governments. And Russian country They ripped it off. They took 5 million square kilometers away, and it took 150 million people. The whole country, the largest country of the world today. 100 million people. They just give them up, and between them there was at least 30 million Russian, and Russian speaking 75 million. Just pretty much everyone spoke Russian in the video, and they loved speaking Russian, and they consider themselves part of the international government. Well, here's an example in Yugoslavia. It's the ethical principle: hit the Serbs. In the Soviet Union, they want to hit the Russians. They want to split up the Russia into 15 parts. The Russians live everywhere in the Pre-Baltics, in the Caucasus, in the Kazakhstan, Central Asia, and let's hit them. Let's hit them. Let's squeeze the Russians out. And everywhere, almost practically, they create ethnocratic regimes. So governments by one nationality: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Greeks, Georgians in Georgia, and so on. And uh, and the main obstacle are Russians everywhere because there's not a lot of Latvian Estonians. There's a lot of Russians in Estonia, in Ottawa city and other cities in Latvia. There's like 40% Russians. Riga is pretty much a Russian city. In Lithuania, about 20% Russians. In Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, everywhere Russians. Kazakhstan, it's about 70% of Russians in Kazakhstan. When I used to live, I left Kazakhstan in 1964. There were 70% Russians, and so on everywhere. All these new governments of ex-Soviet Union, is they all seek to squeeze out the Russian people because only the Russian obstacle is the obstacle for pure nationalistic, ethno-nationalistic government to dominate such a government of a single nationality. Armenia is number one. They squeezed everyone out. They're the most monolithic country government, except the migrant border patrol. So as soon as they took the Russian people out, but how do they defend from Turks? They use the Russian army, and they did this for 300 years. These are our little brothers. Like, what's danger? They call Russian soldiers to save them. But when they have to split the money up, economic priorities, housing, work, territory, land, Russia's out. Russia's out. Uh, and so, 14 years already, Russians everywhere try to squeeze them out. But that's not enough. Well, Russia continues to survive and exist. The biggest government, the biggest militarily, and the cosmic race. And proof of that is Americans are afraid to use military force. They used it on the Balkans, they used it in Afghanistan, they used it in Iraq. Military force was threatening Iran, but Russia, they're afraid. The biggest explanation we could say that in military and scientific spheres, we are number one. By the resource, we're number one in the world. We have 30% of the world resources: oil, water, gold, diamonds, minerals, nickel, everything. Take it. The most natural resources of the planet. We have 30%. And the population is less than 3%. So that means for each citizen in the Russian Federation, we have natural resources 10 times more than the average citizen of any other government. Well, of course, in national potential, educational potential, our people are educated. 10% of soil for grain. We only have 2% of the population, but 10% of the world's fertile grain soil. The good soil that can make bread and many other foods 10 times, 5 times more than the average. So on average, we are richer than everyone else and about 7 times more. Of course, they're gonna hate us. Like the A plusers, like the champions, of the Olympics, like that famous singer, famous actor, the famous politician. Hate. They all know him. He's popular. They vote for him. Same with Russia. So what do we do next? We take out the Soviet Union, and again, from economically speaking, we can pick ourselves up again. The resources are there, potential is there. Engineers, we all have it. We have to hit where? We have to hit ethno geo politics. Already on the territory of Russian Federation, these Democrats, again are creating the cheap Russian Federation. They were tired of the Soviet Union. They they want a fragile government because economics. There's always problems, and there always will be problems. You can never solve economic. There's always going to be rich. There's going to be poor. There's going to be nature catalyst. But the most important question is ethno geopolitics. They want again. They use a asymmetric, not logical Russian Federation. 32 national regions. That's on the whole territory of Russia. And already now, most of the Russians, 80% of the Russians, for international standards, it's only necessary to have 40%, 60% to have a monolithic, mononational. They don't consider us mononational. In the constitution, we multinational people of Russia, but we're the Russians again, the dominant Russian, the dominant people. Next time, it's Russia, and here again, the hit is by the Russian people, the dominant. The second the hit is Orthodox. Look at all the bad religions. There's expansion of Catholics, Protestants, Buddhists, Christian, so on. So again, like in the Balkans, they want to hit the main people, main nationality. They want to hit the main religion, Orthodox, in order to discombobulate the foundation, so everything collapses. So you listen to me right now. Let's take the foundation from this building. Everything, no, nothing there. All the walls, everything goes down. Everything's gonna just crumble. And the government, why the main term today is ethno geopolitics. Ethnos people, ethnos people. If you hit the ethnos people, then there's no Russian Federation. And that's what they're doing. Look at the politics. Tataria, Bashkiria, Yakutia, and others. Mordovia, Chuvashia, and so on. Everywhere they're squeezing out the Russians. Only the local nationalists, Yakutians, Tatars, Bashkir, Chuvashia, and so on. They like diaspora are living across the whole territory of Russia. Again, Russians don't have a name. Well, they're a nation. 7 million Tatars in Kazan, 1 million, and 6 million all over Russia. They live fine. The Russians, 120 million. Where they don't they're nowhere they can feel at home. If the nationalist region, there's 32 nationalist regions. That's half the country. Look at the card map. The whole north, the whole north of ours, from Karelia to Chukotki, all national regions. Karelia, Nyency, Evenki, Yakutsi, Chuchi, Khanty, Mansi, and all these tons of different types of people, nationalities. But the real Russian regions, Vladivostok, Khabarovsk is only we go down towards Moscow, just one line. Everything north, national regions. Look at Yakutia, is how it's written. Two Europes. Later, look at Volga. Look at the north. Komi is also at the north. And little south is Udmurtia. In the beginning, Urals, Bashkiria, Mordovia, Chuvash, Mariag. Again, the whole Volga is our national regions. Let's go to the south. In the center of Krasnodarsky Krai, and the city of Krasnodar. On that river of the Kuban, Adige, Cherkessia, I said Northern Ossetia, Kabardino-Balkaria, Ingushetia, Chechnya, Dagestan, Tudusha, Central Volga, Kalmykia. Where's Russia? Where's Russia? And that's the mind of the slow dispersion. They laid the mine, the Bolsheviks laid the mine. It's the most scariest thing they did to us. Is a nationalist work of government. There's no other example of this in any other countries. It's federation, a unitary government to have the government to be set up in such a way of the nationalist question. The United States, Federation of the States, geography, Texas, California, Washington, Chicago, geographical names, France, department, geographical, Italia, Oblast, India, a big national government. Same with the states. Territorial unitary units. We are the last on the map, a political map of the world, and the governments where there is the most dishonest principle of nationalist. And this way, even the Russian Federation are trying to hit the Russian Federation by this moment. so that we are we are we are we are demeaning the rights. So we're doing something wrong in the North Caucasus because we're fighting terrorists, but they're telling us we're doing something wrong. They said they're killing Brazils and kill the Brazilians in London by accident. Thought you were terrorists, all by accident. Well, I'm sorry about that. But we are killing real terrorists. We're catching real terrorists, but they're blaming us, or we're kind of going past our some kind of a jurisdiction, or we're not acting properly. So, so today, Russia is being blamed. Well, first of all, they're squeezing Russians out of all the regions. North Caucasus, Chechnya, almost 100% took the Russians out, and others, Zhirinovsky in Siberian national regions, and Moscow turns out to be the capital, our capital. And even here, there's 12 million people. 1/4 of migrants that came, and they're from Caucasus and Asia, Afghans, Azerbaijanis, Caucasia, and everybody. 1/4. So even Russians in the capital of the Russia can't even seem feel comfortable. And the nationalist regions, republics, and cries like republics, and autonomous okrugs, oblasts, um, an oblast, one oblast, a Jewish oblast, a Warska oblast, Khabarovsk and the Khabarovsk Krai. There, those powers that be, even there, and in the Russian regions, Moscow and the other centers of Russian oblasts and ethnic Russians, lots of the trading posts are taken, the posts are taken by non-Russians. Doesn't matter what nationality, non-Russians. So they're creating a situation where in the Russian Federation, it's not for Russia, it's not comforting. They're not owners, they're nobody. Guys, like it's a hit on the ethnos again. And it's beginning Brzezinski was set straight. They were taking together all the scientists about 30 years ago. He was saying, create a weapon, ethnic weapon that hits a particular nationality. So, for example, some kind of a illness we can check, and it's like a there's illnesses only exist in particular nations, and then get these territories in contagion to hit the epidemics. So take us out of the whole people. They have this weapon. We could take the whole region out. And in Russian, will the Russian get hit? No. So even they're trying to use some weapon of massive ethnic cleansing, ethnic character, so we could hit certain particular ethnicity. So thank God they don't have such anti-Russian weapon of mass they haven't created, but they're hitting the culture. Look at the language, look at Moscow and other countries. Everything in English. Sail, sail. Why did it say sail? In Russian, put the sail in Russian. Why sail in English and everything else? All the advertisements and the bulletin boards, and they use the terms dealers, killers. It's all these words, and so are boutique and lavka in Russian lavka. Why in French boutique mouton? It's just a sheep, it's lamb. No, Toulouse is not mouton. The code is from mouton. No, it's not. It's lamb. It's from a pig. No, he's talking Russian. What? So you have to. They're already taking the language and they're ruining us with other words, English words in the advertisement, literature, art. All of it is in foreign. There's no xenophobia. There's no scare, fear of foreign. Russian Emperor, they always loved foreigners. They brought him here with strength. They invited him. There was no problems. The question is about the fairness of shadiness or scamminess when they take everything Russian and close it up with the foreignness tuned to it. Look again at our government, like with the you compare the great Germans or the Raymond. There's only 15 ministers and there's two Germans. But how many Germans live in Russia? If turns out almost 15% of the people are Germans, not even a 1% population living in Russia. But there's two ministers German. And the government of the Gaidar is almost everybody was Jewish, and the population was just very little. And again, we're not talking about percent. Talented, let them be. But in Russia, it's done so in a covert way, when everything is covered with absolutely foreign movies, spectaculars, foreign presentations, speeches, foreign speech, cars, foreign cars.
go into space, but doing maintenance. We're maintaining the foreign astronauts, Russian engine, Russian ship, but everything about him. Um, is too much. The goal is to hit the Russian people. Religion. Eastern Orthodox is like the purest religion. The Soviet Union abused it. Just killed hundreds of thousands of Eastern Orthodox mm, servants. But today they're still hitting the Eastern Orthodox. They take over churches. They kill the fathers and they intervene into Christian lessons. They conflict them into prisons and hospitals. Of course, and for some reason, all the other religions have more money, more space, more opportunities to publish their books, but the Eastern Orthodox, again, is behind. Russian Orient, again, they hit day and night. They took out the Russian Federation. Oh, 50 million. America, there's 7 million. America, Germany, 3 million. The best. Again, they squeeze everything out of Russians. The best people, the best scientists, students, they take it. They take and they throw out everything. That's like so the worst meat is the legs because the chicken runs and the acids they all go into the legs. The best of the breast meat, the white meat of the breast without the skin is the best. They eat it. The Americans eat it. The nation the number one. But Slavic people, about the third and fourth, they take their the leftovers, the feet, the tails, and so on. So there goes a they're taking even food, even vodka. Now this poison they're giving it from Finland, Poland, so on, and North Caucasus. This dirty drink, and every day, the only country where every day from false fraudulent vodka die 100 people, and everything else 200,000 a year. Are poisoned, or burnt, or drowned on the road. Killed. They killed them in the entrances. Suicide. About 600 a day. 200,000 people a year. Can you believe it? Not a single country in the world has experienced this pressure. Look at the death of look at the death of Russians abroad, or and before they're due to suicide. Russians are doing suicide. We look at Latvia; it's number one in Europe for suicides, but it's mostly Russians. Latvia gave everyone there's zero principal citizenship, but so they're all Latvian, but for nationality, they're not what they're Russians. That's why this spreading of democracy is not democracy. It's actually hid by the main nationality of the country. That's why they hit them with the drugs. The gypsies spread everywhere. Afghans are anybody that are minorities are being expanded by Russians are the consumers. They war so they they make money from Russians' health, and this is ethno geopolitics. What's the purpose? Well, first of all, the whole point of the lecture when you talk about the goal is to conquer the natural resources. To do that, we need to conquer the geographical space. But in order to conquer that, we need to take out one nation. We need to take out the Russian nationality. But everybody else, there will be minor governments, small Tataria, small Bashkiria, Chuvasha, Udmurtia, Hunter, Dagestan, all the four, like Africa, and they're gonna fight each other. And the mission, UN mission will be there, and the Europe will be there, and so European Union was there, and they're going to be saying, "You guys are not doing a good job there. You're ruining the human rights there." But most important is human rights. There won't be any Russians. There won't be Russian federations, and the 40 governments. They're not going to mean anything. Their resources will be held in the hands of the Europe and the United States, and that's 30% of the world's resources. Look at how they, look at how they in Iraq. There's a lot of oil, but it's just oil. Well, okay, maybe 50% of the world reserves, but it's just oil. But what else is needed for them? And they occupied, they're put in the court. Saddam Hussein sent them to court. So the most important ethno geopolitics is to take out some nationality, ethnos, in order to take over their geographic. So they want to take out the Russians and take out their geographical space from the Baltics to the Pacific Ocean, but let the smaller people live there. Somebody has to go take the garbage out, put the charcoal on the fire, or burn the heat, turn them to build the roads. All they can all our peoples, 150 nationalities. Let them have their small major governments. They won't be able to survive independently. They're going to be exploited in order to they could do the exports of the raw materials to Europe and America, and then they will come here like with their toys, like in the African colonialism, and take out the. You just give them food. They give them like the leftovers. They'll give them the feed and tail. They're not even going to give them the feed and tail. They're just going to give them some corn, some feed from the leftovers that they get from the. So they get the leftovers of the feed from the pigs and the cows, and that's what they're going to. That's what they're going to feed the leftover small governments of leftover Russia. So this is the reason of our meeting. So we're trying to understand these processes. Today it's happening. No, it's happening 300 years ago. Already the feudal countries were formed in Paris in the 1017 year. They got together, some colleagues got together, and they say, how are we going to live? How are we going to grow further? How can we expand? Europe's getting overpopulated. There's not a lot of resources. But the people are a lot. Where are we going to go with people? Well, behind us is La Manche, Britain, nowhere. Atlantic Ocean. You south, there's Mediterranean Sea, Africa, it's kind of hot, and there's Negroes there. What about the east? Yeah, some kind of Russian empire there, some kind of Tsar there, some Eastern Orthodox. They're there. They're different religion. Their political regime is different. The people are different. It's not German, it's not French, not Dutch. 300 years already now they're doing this battle with us. They didn't like the Tsar. They got what they wanted. They influenced the Russian Emperor. They pushed Russia into the First World War. They did it. They did it. They convinced them through insiders. Soviet Union. They convinced them to fight in Nazi Germany, and and the Tsar regime. They didn't like the Tsars, and the Soviet Union also wasn't happy with it. But today we have democracy. What's wrong? Like just like in Europe, everyone's free. Everyone's all religions, all the people, all economic businesses. Why are you attacking us now? Still. They're fighting. They're going after us even harder, even more dangerous, and more thinner weapons and more hitter weapons and space, and they continue to do so. Look at the Soviet Union. They were in Turkey, the closest they've been in the NATO bases, and now they're already in the pre-Baltic under Smolensk. If they take Ukraine, they're going to be behind Kursk and Arlo, and they're already there. They're already in Uzbekistan, in Kyrgyzstan, in Tajikistan, and of course they're going to come to Kazakhstan, to Azerbaijan, and Armenia, and the Soviet, they're already in Georgia. So they're continuing to move against towards us. And again, this is an element of ethno geopolitics. It's not about the regime. The 100th times we'll do a democracy. 100 Holocaust we don't put them in prison. We'll do out of them semi-government presidents still. They're still going to choke our country. Economic factor. Some kind of ethnos wants to live good. What ethnos? Americans in the first place, second, European Union. They want to eat every day a nice ham sandwich with good cheese, with good ham, with good wine, good soup, some good second champagne, cognac, whiskey, gin, and so on. Cars, vacation, all this. You need you need sources. You need energy, metal, oil, gas, forest, charcoal, coal. Everything that's history, the main resources of world economic and material well-being. Well, there's a problem. There's a problem that's facing us today. So we must properly understand what's happening. We're going towards expanding the territory. That's the right answer. We need 50 territories with geographic names without any colorings. 3 million population, and then we have 150 million population. And the governors should be elected, the head of the government, elected in local parliaments in order to prevent coup d'état by the criminal or anti-Russian. Look at how they're trying to split up Russia. The Far East are trying to connect. They want to reorient them towards China and Korea. These are two, and there's in the far Moscow, Kazakhstan, pressures on some Siberian regions in the Central Asia, Moldavsky, Novosibirsk Oblast, Polska, Zelensk, and so on. Turkey is pressuring the Caucasus, that's probably proposing in Central Asia. Finland is even shoving. They decided to do something. They want to take ownership of the Finno-Ugric people. You must not know who Finno-Ugric people are. That is Finland, with Hungary and Estonia. Well, that's a foreign countries. For us, it's Karelia, Nancy, Delgane, and it's Hansi, Mansi, and it's strong, Moti, Marisi, and Malda. It's all Finno-Ugric group. So Russia has three main elements of a major of the country. Russian dominance is the Slavic people, Eastern Orthodox, and it's also the Turkish people, Turkey, the Turkish Russia, and all of Northern Caucasus except Chechnya, Ingushetia, Kabarda, Adige, and Circassia. Caucasus, Turkish speaking. Dagestan is also Turkish speaking. It's half of the Caucasus basically. And here Turkey presses Iran, Georgia, Azerbaijan, on all of this. And today, everything against us. And it's all related to ethnos, geopolitics. So whatever actions of our government, we must look through the lens of these factors. Look at the got they hit the Russian veterans. They they half of the terrorists for the phone, for the flags, the transport was cheap. They took all they took it all. Maybe there's some money they're gonna compensate, but for the psychological hit for the veterans, they wanted something. They wanted to have something, but they put him into the main line. The government doesn't understand ethno geo politics. Take a regular Western model liberalism in economics and in democracy, and that's why it's not working out for us. That's why we don't have in the government Duma Express Apple from the Western Party. There's no government of Primakova instead of the government of Kiriyenko. But today, Fratkova is closer towards the government of Kiriyenko because the next Kiriyenko. So how only how the government and all our officers and ministers learn how to properly the proper factors of geopolitical ethno-geopolitics, that's when we'll have a more proper and positive result. I'm finishing this lecture. Time has passed, and I'm making a conclusion. Ethno-geopolitics will allow you, if you do important to understand it, the main principle will help you understand and to put the correct diagnosis of the past, the present, and give a good prediction of the future. So everything that happens in the world, major political wars, revolutions, it's in order to benefit some kind of people, ethnos, and wars too, and coup d'etats. And all this happens in a plural geographic space, Russia, Europe, Asia, Africa, USA. And it always happens even as a in the goals and the interests of this ethnos. And everything else is just a cover up. It could be a religious cover up, multicultural cover up. It could be a Council of Europe, NATO, Warsaw Pact, SHOS is an organization, Shanghai, CL. But deeper, we'll talk about it in separate time, the next lecture. But the point from this lecture that you made, a point, always look for ethnic primary factor in any world process. Always somewhere there lies the ethnical, the main factor. Which people, which nationality is best. Anyways, there's many conflict. Anyways, it's all on a basic level. But on the global level, it is ethnic moment. So I would like that you learned how to distinguish him, understand him, and also keep track of this important element, ethno-geopolitics, as the main instrument of understanding, deciphering the world processes and everything, all our international relations. Thank you for your attention, and I hope next time I'll be able to answer all the questions that you have after listening to the lecture. And don't worry, maybe a lot of your brains went, wow, it's hard. I'm just saying, for me, I have 60 years of experience, professor, honorary advocate, and I use this West Chinese, and I do this all my life. A lot of people who listen to me the first time, you may not understand all of it, but don't rush. Just listen to this lecture again, and listen to it, analyze it, and read your notes, and maybe in 5, 10, 15 years, you'll understand. This lecture was useful too. Goodbye.